Bonjour French 102 students. Comment allez-vous? Salut, ça va? We reintroduce all those greetings to get your ears used to hearing French again after a nice long winter break. Okay, so we're going to be beginning with a cultural presentation about Chapitre 4 en Amérique, en Louisiane, and we'll also be talking about family, en famille. So in this first presentation, I'll be kind of using a mixture of English and French. You probably haven't heard French for some time. Your ears need to get tuned to it again a little bit. So in this first presentation, we're mostly going to be talking about culture. We will be reviewing some French. We're going to be looking at some reading strategies. And then moving into our second presentation later on this week on Wednesday, we'll start to get into some grammar and vocabulary topics. Okay, so moving on to talking a little bit about culture in Louisiana. So across the top here it says géoculture, so that's like world culture, basically geographic culture. And in this chapter we're looking at Amérique, America, en Louisiane. Okay, so as we see here, there's a lot of French description about the state of Louisiana, and I think a good reading strategy just to get you used to doing this when you're reading in French is to kind of look at these passages and sort of pick out the words that are already familiar to you. So obviously Louisiane looks pretty familiar. Okay, we can recognize that from the name of the state of Louisiana. Okay, moi, you might remember from learning to tell time in French 101. Like moi le quart, il est 10 heures moins le quart. It's like 9:45 or a quarter to 10. That might ring a bell with you. Okay, parle goes along with the verb parler, to speak, so we know that one. Français, of course, we already know what that means. Okay, let's see. Et means and, so that might be a familiar word. Again, we have parle, so we know that's about speaking. And let's see, maison is probably a word that you might remember from French 101, also meaning house. So if we look at those words that are already pretty familiar to us, and we can even highlight words like nombre, which is number, that already looks familiar to us as English speakers. Habitant. Okay, so habiter, like j'habite, tu habites, il habite. Remember, that's to live. So habitant is the people who live somewhere, habitants. We recognize that as kind of a familiar word from English too. So the first thing we're learning about is the number of people who live in Louisiana, right? You might remember all the different numbers that we learned about in French 101. So in this case, it is 4 millions, like million, 600 000. Okay, so 4,600,000. So that's the number of people living in the state of Louisiana. Un peu moins de 195 parlent français. So a few less than 195,000 people speak French. Okay, so these are familiar words. We know these and we can use these words to help us read and understand. So a few less than 195,000 speak French. Cadien, Cajun, ou Creole. So Creole, what is that? What does that refer to? And even Cadian or Cajun, what does that refer to? Just to give you a little history behind this, many of the people who came to settle in Louisiana came from the Acadia region in Canada, like where Quebec is nowadays. They came and settled in that area, and they may have come into contact with other groups of people who were already there, maybe people who were brought as slaves to that area at that time, and they spoke different languages, and because they spoke different languages and they needed to be able to communicate with each other, a language was born out of that. The precursor to a Creole or Creole is called a pidgin language, which is usually spoken as kind of the first stage of that new language being created. And then as children grow up hearing that new language in its infancy, it becomes its own language or a Creole. And you might have heard of Haitian Creole, Jamaican Creole. The same phenomenon happens in other places where languages make contact with each other. Okay, so they might speak French, they speak Cajun, or they speak Creole. Et parmi eux, among them, 180,000 parlent ces langues à la maison. So where do they speak these languages? At home, right? So about 180,000 of them. Okay, so getting a little bit deeper into this, la ville de Lafayette est au cœur de la région Cadienne. Okay, so ville, you might remember from French 101. Okay, and that is like a city or a town, and you could guess that by looking at the name of the city that comes right after. That makes it easy to understand. Okay, région, of course, is region, and cœur, you may not know this word, but if you could guess why they're talking about this city, why it's important, you could guess it's the most important city in that region. Cœur just means heart, so it's at the heart of that region. La région Cadienne, l'Acadienne, and they also tell us 22 paroisses. You might have heard of the parishes of Louisiana, and this is the French word for that. Okay, dans la partie sud de la Louisiane. Sud is the south, so the southern part of Louisiana. La Nouvelle-Orléans, okay, that I'm sure you can understand very easily. New Orleans est au cœur de la région créole. So it's in the heart of the Creole region. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of the number of people living in Louisiana, the number of people who speak French in that region, and some of the important locations in that area too. Okay, we'll take a look at one more slide here, which I think is even more interesting because it talks about music. And music is one of the most fun and interesting parts of any culture. So in this picture, they mention le frottoir. Okay, do you know what a frottoir is? I actually didn't either until I learned about this, so I thought it might be good to show you a picture of it. Let me just go ahead and pull that up for you. Okay, so to move myself aside here, it's kind of like an instrument that you wear draped over your chest area and you play it to make a rhythm. So that's a frottoir. And that's something that we might hear about in Zydeco music, which is what they tell us about in this. Ooh, let me get to the right place. To this slide about Louisiana music. So, le frottoir et l'accordéon sont deux instruments traditionnels du Zydeco. Okay, so Zydeco is one kind of music that we might hear about from this region of Louisiana, and I'll play you a sample of that soon. Okay, un fait dodo est une soirée dansante cadienne. So it looks like a fun celebration, fun cultural kind of experience to have there. And I hope very soon we will find our way out of this pandemic and we can go experience these kinds of things again. Okay, so let's look for some words that might be familiar to us here in this short paragraph. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight a few of them. So aime, you might remember from French 101, is the verb aimer, to like. Okay, musique, danse. These should all look very familiar to us. Okay, Zydeco we already know is a genre of music from this area of the United States. Swamp pop is another one. So being an English term, that stands out to you right away. Okay, genre is a French word. We use it in English all the time though to talk about a type of music. So musique and originaire. So all of these words, I think, all help us to figure out what this sentence is about. So, les Cadiens et les Créoles, so the people of this region of Louisiana, aiment aussi, they also like la musique et la danse. So they like music, they like dancing. Le Zydeco et le swamp pop sont deux genres de musique originaire. So we can probably figure out that these genres of music are original, they're native to this area, just by that word originaire. Okay, dérivé du blues. Okay, this probably looks a lot like the word derive in English. We can highlight that one. Blues, easy to pick that out. Musique country and swing. Okay, so this kind of music, it's derived from blues, from country music, from swing. Okay, le zydeco a pour instrument traditionnel le violon, l'accordéon, la guitare, l'harmonica et le frottoir. Okay, so we know that this kind of music uses as its traditional instruments. So these are all words that we can easily recognize just from being English speakers. Okay, and all of these instruments are easy to recognize. The violin, the accordion, the guitar, the harmonica, and the new one we just learned about, which is frottoir. So that's pretty cool to know about a new instrument from this type of music. Okay, so le swamp pop est un mélange. You might remember this verb, être, coming from French 101, and this is the conjugated form of être that goes with a singular subject. So le swamp pop, it's one type of music, and we use the verb est. The conjugation of être is est that goes along with that singular subject. So un mélange, in case that word isn't familiar to you, it just means a mixture. So swamp pop is a mixture of zydeco, rock, and boogie. So now to hear a couple of samples of these kinds of music. Okay, so we'll begin with a little bit of zydeco. So I'll play a short sample for you. So that's one you could listen to a little bit more on your own. I think it's a great sample of what zydeco music sounds like. It really sounds like fun. I would love to go and see a live performance of that. But you can see the frottoir there, the guitar, the accordion. It just sounds like fun. The other kind of music that they mention is swamp pop. And here's a short sample of that as well. That kind of reminds me of like music from the 1950s, I would say. So it's a little different style than zydeco, but those are two types of music that are featured from Louisiana. So kind of interesting to learn about all these different aspects of French-speaking cultures. Okay, so that's everything we'll be learning about Louisiana culture in this first presentation on Chapter 4, Chapitre 4. Another thing I'll let you know about the presentations is that as you go through these, I'll be including some interactive questions from time to time, maybe a multiple choice or a true-false or a short answer, or maybe asking you to practice a little bit of pronunciation, or maybe I'll ask you the translation of a word from French to English or vice versa. And these would be questions that would help you to prepare for any chapter tests or even the cultural discovery projects. So maybe I could ask you culture questions that would help to prepare you for those questions on a test. These are not questions you have to answer, but I would strongly recommend that you do. I'll be able to see students' answers to these questions. And that will give both of us an idea of how much you're keeping up with the material, and that will just be a good gauge for everybody to know how you're progressing through the material. So just watch out for those in all of the videos that I post each week. So I hope that you enjoyed this short tour through Louisiana. I wish you a good evening, bonsoir, and bonne chance. Good luck.